on, stand up straight, would you? Any of you want to be president? Anybody at all? Where are the Girl Scouts?
Will the audience please rise? Color guard attention. Color guard advance. Color guard, present the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Color guard salute. 2. Color guard attention. Right face. Color guard dismissed. You may be seated.
Thank you. All right, the fellow who led the pledge is Matthew, and I can't pronounce his last name. What is it?
Peprosky.
Brodowski, and he's 16, and he goes to Villa Park. Thank you, Matthew, and thanks to all of these scouts. But now, in terms of young people, you ain't seen nothing yet. One of our favorite groups is a group called Celebration USA, also from Orange County, Villa Park, I think. And they have toured the nation. They have performed here many, many times over the years. Their leader, Paula, is one of our great supporters, and we of her for the good work she does with these young people. Please welcome Celebration USA.
Hats off, here comes the flag we love so well. Hats off,
we're going to introduce our presidents, 4 presidents. These are the presidents that make up Mount Rushmore. And I don't know if any of you saw KTLA this morning. Anybody see KTLA with Gail Anderson? It was phenomenal. And she showed Mount Rushmore and then showed these 4 great presidents. These are the first, the third, the 16th, and the 26th president. I'm going to introduce them now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the first president of the United States, George Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, the third president, Thomas Jefferson. The 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. And the 26th president of the United States, President Teddy Roosevelt. He's got his teddy bear with him, too. Look at that. Aren't they great? Doesn't that look like Mount Rushmore? I don't know if they have flags up there. But now what we're going to do, Mr. President, please be seated. Thank you. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask each one of them to speak for 4 or 5 minutes and tell you a bit about their life and legacy. Then, after that, we'll take questions to any of the presidents. So if anybody, be thinking of questions, particularly you young people who have now the opportunity to talk one-on-one with a president. And I'm going to ask you to come up here and just form a line, and we'll take all the questions that we can. So we'll start with the first president, the man who created the Constitution and the United States, George Washington.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I am so happy that you came for my 282nd birthday and the 230th anniversary of the end of the war. I did not want to be commander-in-chief, but I took on the job for 8.5 years. I didn't want to be the President of the United States, but I took on that job for 8 years to try to preserve the Constitution. I did not wear this uniform for my inauguration in New York, but I did wear this uniform when I was installed as President of the Constitutional Convention, because I wanted to make sure that all the delegates understood the sacrifices of that war. I can still remember 6 months after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, when Thomas Paine wrote, "These are the times that try men's souls, where the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will not stand, but he that stands will endure the love of the country." And I wanted to make sure that people understood what it was like on that Christmas day, 1776, when we stood on this side, the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River, and the soldiers, 2,200 of them, only knew that the operation was called Victory or Death. They came and they stood in a blinding snowstorm, a rain and wind and sleet and hail. It was a nor'easter that was going up into the north. And there we stood. Well, John Glover and his boys took those barges that carried pig iron up and down the Delaware. They loaded up 2,200 troops, 50 horses, 18 cannons, and many cannonballs across that river. It took 13 hours. Whether you were standing here or standing there, you stood in the weather. most of the powder that we had was all dry. And I went along with my troops and I said, "Fix the bayonets, boys, I am determined to take Trenton." 45 minutes after the battle began, there was 108 casualties on their side. There were 4 wounded on ours. Only 2 men died in that whole operation, and they died waiting for John Glover and his boys to carry them across the river. This is the time when we saved our nation, our sacred honor, and our treasures. And I wanted to make sure that my administration would do just that and continue with the Constitution. I thank the Smithsonian for taking care of my uniform all these years. I went a couple months ago to try it on, and they told me I couldn't because it was closed. I said, "What's closed?" "The government." I said, "But does the Constitution still stand?" Because I wore this when I was installed as the president of the Constitutional Convention.
Ladies and gentlemen, the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson.
The Constitution of the United States is the collected wisdom of the people. And the Bill of Rights is what every people on earth are entitled to against every government on earth. I was in Paris during the writing of the Constitution, so I wasn't able to have any input. However, James Madison, who was my closest friend, was supposed to keep me informed. Now, unbeknownst to me, they had taken a vow of silence. I know it seems impossible that the government could take a vow of silence and keep it, but they did. So every time I'd write him and say, "Please tell me what you're writing, what you're doing, what the laws are going to be," he'd write back, "Oh, it was very warm today," or "It might rain tomorrow." And he held up the law. He wouldn't tell me anything. But finally, in September of 1789, he sent me a copy. I read it through. It was fantastic. It was brilliant. I wrote him and said, "This is fantastic and brilliant, wonderful, thank you, I cannot support it." He said, "How is that possible? It's everything we ever discussed." I said, "No, there are no protections for the people from their government." He said, "You need never worry about our government traducing, that is, stepping on the rights of its people. They would not do that." And I wrote him a famous line and said, "There never has been, nor will there ever be, a government that will protect the rights of its people until they are enumerated, 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, I suggest a Bill of Rights." 12 were proposed, 10 were supported, and the 12th one eventually in the 1970s was passed. So you have your Bill of Rights. It's only been amended a total of 27 times, which proves that your Constitution works. But it only works if you, the people, support it. If you, the people, get out there and vote. Evil will flourish unless good men can do something to stop it. Do you understand that? If you do not vote, you may not criticize, and I don't have to listen to you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln.
As I entered the White House in early 1861, there were some issues waiting for me. I had to deal with them. One of the issues was that there were some southern states, around 7 of them at first, that decided they want to secede from the Union. They felt that with me winning the presidency, that their states' rights and their tradition of slavery would be in jeopardy. Though many times I stated that I wasn't going to mess with slavery in the states where it already existed. But they either didn't get the message correctly or something happened. They seceded. And eventually 11 states seceded. After that happened, I had second thoughts about what was going on. I never thought that the South would ever take up arms against the Union. I must have been a little naive. It took me a while to finally figure that out. And when they fired on Fort Sumter, I had to make a decision. That decision was to go to war. Go to war against our fellow countrymen, our brothers. But war it had to be. It was 4 years of a horrendous war. During this war, things had to change. We were losing battles. It wasn't looking very well for us. I had been discussing with my cabinet about a certain proclamation. I wanted to wait for the right moment to bring it out. The Emancipation Proclamation. It had to be brought out at the right time. Too early, and it would have been seen upon as a desperate measure to win the war. Too late, and it wouldn't have been effective at all. At the right time, it was effective. But it only lasted until the war was over. Then I helped push through Congress the 13th Amendment, which forever set slavery to be vanished from our country. Eventually, we did win that war. But while this war was going on, we had some bills that we had to have paid. This battle took $1 million a day to finance. We passed the National Banking Pact that brought a currency that could be used in every state. Before that, every state had their own currency. Some banks had their own, some railroads had their own. So we had a national currency, and that way we could collect taxes. Hey, we started that. But it helped finance the war. Another issue during my presidency was the idea of how are we going to get our East Coast and our West Coast together. We had much territory in the middle that was just open frontier territories. We had states on the West Coast that would take months to get information back and forth. Were they with us? Were they against us? Were they still part of the Union? I passed the Homestead Act, which allowed a lot of Easterners to travel west and to buy land cheaply and to help populate in between and on the West Coast. Another issue or another concern during my presidency, during the middle of a war, was the Transcontinental Railroad. The idea of tying the East and the West again together. All the produce and all the gold from California, we wanted that back east. And back east had all their manufacturing to send out west. We thought it would be a very good idea to help with the war effort also. So during 1863, I signed the Pacific Railroad Act to get that going. Sadly, I never got to see it completed. I had some kind of a problem. But I had started that, and I'm very proud of that. And you can see the results today. Another issue or thing that I'm pretty much proud of in my administration or in my presidency was that at the White House, I was the first president to have children there. I had Willie and Ted running around. And I also would get gifts and presents from people from the country. They would come by and they would drop things off. Well, one time they dropped off this little thing that kind of ran around and made a little bit of noise. And it followed Tad, my son, around. It became a pet. Eventually, when this thing got a little bit bigger, it kind of looked kind of tasty. And one day, our butcher kind of was eyeing it with his hatchet behind his back. Now, Tad noticed this also. He wasn't dumb. So he come running to me with tears in his eyes, saying that he thinks the butcher is going to lop off the head of this turkey and serve it for Thanksgiving. And I couldn't allow that. So I had written Tad a little pardon for his turkey named Jack. So I was the first president to pardon a Thanksgiving turkey, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 26th President of the United States, President Teddy Roosevelt.
Bully, I am delighted to be here. You know, there's an old African adage that says to speak softly and carry a big stick and you will go far. But while you keep your eyes to the stars, it is important to keep your feet to the ground. I stand in Armageddon, I am stripped to the buff, and I am ready to battle for the Lord. I believe that the presidency should be the great bully pulpit to fight the fundamental fight for democracy. I believe in a square deal for the American people. That is to see that our laws are enforced and that the rules are enforced, to see that there is equality of opportunity for all of our citizens. And as president, I sought to do that. Within the first year of my presidency, I ended the coal strike by bringing the coal miners and the mine owners together in arbitration to settle that strike in the interests of the American people. Also during my presidency, we passed the Pure Food and Drug Act to see not that the customer beware, but that the consumer and the citizen be protected. I also sought to enforce our antitrust laws. I want you to understand, I am not against corporations. I am against the evil in them. I draw the line against misconduct, not against wealth. But my greatest achievement, and I believe the greatest challenge we face in our domestic policies, is that of the conservation of our natural resources. Yes, we have the right to develop those resources. We have a duty to develop those resources, but it is also our duty to protect them for future generations. So I sought to make conservation of our resources a cornerstone of our national policy. As president, I created our third national park, Yosemite National Park, after I went there. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I was there on an outing with Mr. John Muir, who convinced me of and I was convinced of the beauty of that place, that it had to be preserved for future generations. I made the Grand Canyon the first national monument. I created the first national wildlife refuges and created over 100 million acres of new national forests. And in foreign affairs, it is not a question of whether the United States is going to take a role in foreign affairs. Yes, we are going to take a role in foreign affairs. It is a question, are we going to take a role for good or for ill? As president, as I had done with in the coal strike with the coal miners and the mine owners, I brought Russia and Japan together, who were fighting a war, brought them to negotiations at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, negotiated an end to the Russo-Japanese War, and as a result, I became the first American, as well as the first American president, to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. I also sent our fleet around the world, painting it white, because I wanted the world to know that the United States had arrived as a major world power and that we were to be respected as such a power. But probably my greatest achievement in world affairs was the building of the Panama Canal. Now, Britain and France had tried to build such a canal but had failed. And I tried to negotiate with Colombia, which at that time controlled the Isthmus of Panama. But I had as much success trying to negotiate with those Colombian jackrabbits as one could nail currant jelly to a wall. And when the people of Panama broke out in rebellion against their Colombian masters, I sent an American warship down to the coast of Panama in support of the Panamanian Revolution. We recognized the new Republic of Panama and signed a treaty with them, giving us control of a 10-mile wide strip across the Isthmus of Panama. And it was during my administration we began the building of the canal. And while the Congress debates the canal treaty, let them debate the canal treaty, because the building of the canal will go on. And I just want to finally say this, that as I approach the twilight of my life, I know that when death takes me, it will have to take me when I am asleep. Because if I am awake, there definitely will be a struggle. I just want to say this, nobody enjoyed being president as much as I did. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank each and every one of you. Like President Nixon, there's so much more to him when you hear about the full record, and you've helped us, you've enlightened us about all of your accomplishments. Now we'll take a few questions, and if you will come forward, don't be shy, or if you have a question, raise your hand. And I see one coming here, so state your name and your question and who you'd like to answer it.
My name's Vanessa, and I would like to ask, like, all of them.
Everybody?
Like, what do you think of the current president?
The current president?
Current president.
Well, first of all, who is your president today? What was his name?
Barack Obama.
Obama?
Obama?
Sounds to me like an Irishman. Where is he from?
I don't know.
I mean, can you tell me something about Mr. Obama?
He's our president.
Yes, I know he's the president, but that's a very strange name. I mean, is he Irish? Is he of Irish background?
All right. We've got a line here,
Well,
so I'm going to
because-
move on.
My name's Ariana, and I want to ask Thomas Jefferson, where did you go to school?
Thomas Jefferson, where did you go to school?
Well, this will be a surprise. I was homeschooled for some time. And then when I was 7 years old, I was sent away to a parson about 50 miles away who had 10 boys. And the first or second year, I was 7 years old, 8 years old. We learned classical Greek and Latin and mathematics, and we got a basis. However, he was so mean that it set up a lifelong antipathy, that is, a disagreement with pastors. I had a lot of trouble with that idea. So when I went to William and Mary College, I was 16 years old, and you graduated then in 2 years, rather like a junior college today, I believe. And so then I felt I was ready for almost anything, including the presidency, because education wasn't necessarily the basis for a good president. It was for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alex Juarez, and I'd like to ask Theodore Roosevelt a question. Why is the teddy bear named after you?
Well, I would be delighted to tell you that story. I was on a camping trip in Mississippi. Actually, I was on a hunting trip, and someone had found a poor bear cub and brought it into the camp and wanted me to shoot and kill it. I refused to do so. So when the story became public, a toy manufacturer in New York decided to honor me by creating this toy and naming it in my honor, the teddy bear.
My name is Ethan, and I would like to ask George Washington, how did it feel when you were at war? At war.
At war?
At war.
I was at war many years of my life. The Revolutionary War took 8.5 years. But before that, I was British, and I was in what is known as the French and Indian War. I had 4 bullet holes through my jacket, 2 horses shot out from under me, and I wrote to my brother, and I said, there's a certain romance of the bullets whizzing past your ear.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Cameron Bragg, and I'd like to ask Abraham Lincoln, how many times did your hat fall off?
Good question.
Too many to count. But many times, as you can tell by how tall it was. But I had it shot off one time, I'll have you know, as I was traveling from Washington, D.C. to our summer home out on the soldiers' home outside of Washington by about 3 miles. I was on my horse, and in the early evening, a bullet had ran through my hat and it knocked it off my head. So that was like one of the, I disregarded it, but it was considered one of the first assassination attempts on my life. Good question.
My name's Mara. My name's Mara, and I want to ask Thomas Jefferson, what happened to your 2 bear cubs?
What happened? What?
to the two bear cubs Lewis and Clark gave you?
Bear cubs?
The bear cub?
That's
We ate them.
My name is William Loftus. My name is William Loftus, and I'd like to ask George Washington, how long did it take you to write the Articles of Confederation?
It was a mutual thing that we did, and that was the beginning of what is known as our Constitution. And I put a lot of effort and time, but remember, I had no formal education. I too was homeschooled, but I did not even get to go to college. And so therefore, most of my writings had a lot of problems with them. I always needed somebody, and especially James Madison and others to write for me.
My name's
Let me say one thing. We'll end it with the fellow in the green, okay, at the end, so we can't take any more, but we'll go through these, all right?
My name's Ism, and I would like to ask Abraham Lincoln, what do you keep under your hat?
What you keep under your hat.
Why, I've got notes, young lady. And another one. Did you think I had a pastrami with cheese in here?
Hi, my name is James Russo, and I would like to ask Abraham Lincoln, what did you like to do when you were little?
When I wasn't old? On my time off, you mean? Is that what you're asking? I like to read. I enjoyed reading. That's what gave me my education, was reading. That's how I learned how to fight in battle. How to come up with strategies was by reading.
And you read in front of the fireplace, right?
Yes.
What happened to your computer? You didn't, no.
My name is Julia, and I want to ask Thomas Jefferson, why did you choose Lewis and Clark to make the expedition across the Pacific Ocean?
Thank you. Meriwether Lewis was the son of a very close friend of mine, and the boy was 5 when his father died in a horse riding accident. So we had talked about this before, that I would become the surrogate father to him. And he was a lovely young man, very, very bright, very strong. He'd been in the war, and unfortunately suffered from bipolar disease, which is what you call it today. We didn't know what to call it then, manic depression probably. But in the meantime, he was in my life, so I hired him to be my secretary when we were in the East Wing of the White House when I was president. And I watched him in action, and I realized that I wanted us to buy the Louisiana Territory, so when we did, we didn't actually know what was there. It hadn't been all mapped out. So I asked him to head up a group and go to the Pacific Ocean and sort of chart everything. He said, I will do it for you, but I must ask my good friend, Mr. Clark, to be my second. Fine. But it wasn't really, it was the Lewis and Clark expedition. So for 28 months, 2 years and 4 months, they went to the Pacific Ocean, came back, mapped everything out, sent me back plants that I could put into Monticello, and he was a very important surrogate son, really, because the only son I ever had died when he was 2 weeks old, so I didn't have any sons. He became one. However, in 1809, his mental illness got the better of him, and he committed suicide the very same moment that William Clark was banging on the door to come in.
Thank you.
And it broke my heart.
Wonderful.
For Theodore Roosevelt, what was your first job in the government before being president?
Your first job in the government.
My first job in government. I was, at the age of 23, I was elected to the New York State Assembly. And I was the youngest member of the State Assembly at that time, and eventually became leader of the Republican faction in the New York Assembly.
George Washington, what was the hardest part of the war?
The hardest part of the war was trying to get Congress to help us with provisions. Someone asked me if I prayed at Valley Forge, and I said yes, and they said, are they written down? And I said yes. Oh, where are they written? I said, look at the letters that I wrote to Congress. They are petitions for help. Believe me, I knew Congress wouldn't come through, but I trusted that the Lord would.
Thank you.
My name is Stephanie. Abe Lincoln, how long was your Gettysburg Address?
How long was the Gettysburg Address?
It was 272 words, spoken in less than 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jacob, and I would like to ask George Washington, when did the war start?
When did the war start?
Well, the war started actually at Bunker Hill, and with the Tea Party throwing the tea over the ship. However, it was in 1775, that I took Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Armies at that time, which later became the Armies of the United States of America.
Mr. President, thank you for giving us your time. We know how busy you are, and we're very grateful that you would come and share your experiences with them. Ladies and gentlemen, as the presidents leave, we're going to play Hail to the Chief. Please remain seated until they leave. Gentlemen, thank you.